Adab and welcome. I'm Aditya and you're watching The Indian Atheist.
Namaskar, Adab and welcome. I'm Aditya and you're watching The Indian Atheist. In the first part of this video, we held the view that you're not an atheist if you politically identify with the right. Now, of course, I don't expect all convinced atheists, even those who are staunchly leftist, to take kindly to that statement, which is in a way to their credit. To them, atheism is merely a rejection of the God hypothesis and nothing more, and technically it is. The problem with that definition, though, is that it only holds when you have what's called a true separation of the church and the state. And that is only maybe true in a handful of countries in the northwestern and central Europe. In most other societies where religion pervades almost every aspect of your life and holds a very strong sway over the manner in which political equations are played out in a way that few atheists can ever really hope to understand, much less appreciate, it would be naive to assume that one's political views, or rather one's propensity to lean to the right, can truly be seen as apart from one's religious worldviews. The two are so tightly woven together that you cannot get rid of one without the other. So no, I'm not mixing atheism with left liberal politics. What I'm trying to say is that religion is an integral part of the right-wing rhetoric, and to large swathes of population anywhere in the world, the two are mixed, and often to such a degree that they're virtually unrecognizable from each other. Hence the statement. Just wanted to clear the air around that subject, and now, without further ado, here's two more types of atheists who I assure you again have next to nothing to do with atheism.
You're not an atheist if you believe that climate change is a hoax.
What's climate change got to do with atheism? Nothing much, really, except for two things. First, when it comes to seeking truth, religions help foster an attitude that is typically in direct conflict with science, reason, and critical thinking. People who are stripped of the armor of their critical thinking faculties are vulnerable to all sorts of targeted disinformation, including the disinformation that leads to climate change denial. And secondly, your response to the question, do you believe in man-made climate change, is a really good test to check if there's a problem with the way you process evidence. It's a really good test because you already have access to a sizable and a very reliable set of scientific observations and data to help you make up your mind about it one way or the other. All of this data is in public domain. What's even better? It's been there for more than 30 years. The data is not pretty to look at. It points to a very inconvenient truth for all of us humans, but especially for the giant oil and natural gas corporations which have every reason to dismiss or discredit or suppress this data. These corporations wield enormous influence over governments all over the world, and governments, in turn, have a fair amount of control over what scientists can or cannot study or publish. So if there was even a remote possibility that there was something fishy about this data, or that the scientists somehow botched up the experiments used to assess climate change, you can rest assured that any such damning evidence for climate change would have long been buried, possibly along with the careers of the scientists involved in the study, or maybe even the scientists themselves. Corporations that mine fossil fuels are extremely powerful entities. Think about it for a minute. Their customer demographic is the entire frickin' human race. Think about the staggering amount of capital that's involved in this enterprise. Think about how easy it must be for them to manipulate politicians and even whole governments. And think about the lengths they can go to protect their business interests. So forget what the evidence for climate change actually says. The very fact that the evidence is alive and kicking for 3 decades, despite brazen attempts by these corporations to recruit bad scientists by the hundreds and press them into the service of discrediting this evidence, is, if you ask me, proof enough that climate change is certainly not something that can be dismissed out of hand. Again, what's all this got to do with your atheism? You see, if you cannot stand on the right side of an issue that's as clear as day, tell me, how can we trust you as a fellow atheist to come through on the right side of issues that require a lot more deliberation and a really careful, impartial screening of evidence? Issues that sometimes wander off to some degree into the ethical territory. Our part, The role we play as atheists in informing the public opinion on all such issues contributes to the larger picture in a scientific, secular humanist framework of society. If we are not a part of that, then what the fuck are we a part of?
You are not an atheist if you disapprove of homosexuality.
Well, first of all, no one asked for your approval or your blessings, but you thought people needed that anyway. Meanwhile, under an increasing peer pressure from fellow democracies, countries around the world have begun to decriminalize homosexuality. So in most of the developed world, at least legally, your disapproval doesn't mean jack, or won't mean jack very soon. But relax, lighten up. I get it, you're straight as an arrow. It's okay to be slightly discomforted by the idea of a sexual act between members of the same sex. Learning to get over such anxieties is an essential part of growing up in the 21st century, but never mind that you never quite managed to grow up. The thing is, no one is asking you to kiss a member of the same sex, nor is anyone deliberately trying to make you uncomfortable by making out with a member of the same sex in your vicinity. The world doesn't revolve around you. There are, and there have always been, sexually, mentally, and emotionally satisfying relationships between members of the same sex that can feel to the people involved every bit as normal as the heteronormative relationships that we've come to expect among members of opposite sex by default. Here's how I don't see how an atheist can be homophobic. Religiosity is also a normative trait. So when it comes to religious faith, you recognize your own innate need to break the bonds of what's considered normative. But when it comes to sexuality, you mindlessly trample over the rights of other people to assert a very similar, entirely justified, and perhaps a more pressing need. What sort of a sorry excuse for an atheist are you? Now, there are significant parallels between feminism and the issue of LGBTQ+ rights. The differences are of degree and chronology mainly, so just like in the case of feminism, the following needs to be said. If you are an LGBTQ+ rights activist or a member of the community yourself, and you're also devoutly religious, I hope you know just how little sense that makes. Organized religions are scared shitless of homosexuals. They absolutely despise them. And the scriptures project this hatred out in no uncertain terms. I can quote specific lines from the scriptures, and I will. But for now, I'll allow you the profound pleasure of finding out yourself. Believe me, the homophobia in religious scriptures is easy to spot. It's not like they've been very subtle about it, especially in the three great monotheistic traditions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. On such issues, though, apologetics of Eastern mystic faiths like Hinduism, Buddhism, or Jainism are usually too quick to claim that their religions are accepting of all ways of life. That is simply not true. The disdain for homosexuality in such faiths it's so covert, it's overt. Read your scriptures and prepare to be grossed out by the sheer contempt for homosexuals, by the sneering condescension that is embodied in the words that are used to describe homosexuals. And yes, there are injunctions in these religions too, at least in the contemporary practice of these religions, if not explicitly spelled out in the scriptures. The less I say about the status accorded to the transgenders in religions, the better it is for the fragile conscience of the straight. Stockholm Syndrome. It's a psychological condition where a person in captivity develops a positive emotional attachment towards their abusive captor. Now, although the syndrome has long been debunked, I have to admit it's a very tempting, plausible explanation for why a member of the LGBTQ community would choose to be religious. Then again, isn't that also true of every religious person ever? We'll wind up this list in the third and the final part of this video essay. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Dhanyavad. Shukriya.